their jobs if the engineer controlled all the train's brakes by himself. Railroad management was reluctant to convert the industry from one standard to another because of the enormous cost involved. It took years of disastrous accidents before air brakes were widely used by the railroads. The telegraph was another safety device available at the time, but not always used by the railroads. A telegraphed message could have prevented many terrible accidents, including one on August 26, 1871. That day, rail traffic had been particularly heavy to and from the Boston area. The number of regularly scheduled trains had been increased from 152 to 192 in order to accommodate passengers attending 2 revival meetings and a military gathering. A local train was pulling out of the Revere depot when suddenly an Eastern Railroad express slammed into it from the rear. Many passengers were killed instantly, while others were scorched by the boiler's escaping steam. When the fire that ensued was finally extinguished, the death toll had reached 32. Throughout the Civil War, the telegraph had proven itself effective in preventing accidents. At Revere, a telegraphed message could have warned the engineers that they were sharing the track with other trains. Eastern Railroad's reluctance to adopt the telegraph cost the victims their lives. But ultimately, disasters such as the accident at Revere forced the railroads to improve safety conditions.
The 1871 Revere wreck resulted in public indignation meetings. It was put down to deliberate murder by the clergy in the pulpits in Massachusetts. Charles Francis Adams, who was one of the commissioners of the Massachusetts State Railroad Commission, actually went as far as to say that the people who were responsible for running a single-track railroad without using the telegraph for dispatching should be criminally liable for what happens on that railroad.
The Revere Crash was only one of many train disasters which captured the imagination of the public and the press of the day.
From the 1850s on, there were a great number of accidents, horrible accidents. These were reported in the press of the time, the daily newspapers, in the journals such as Harper's or Leslie's and Ballew's. They followed every accident very closely and reported on these in the most sensational kind of journalism.
The descriptions of chaos seen at train wrecks were accompanied by illustrations showing bodies flying through the air and lying in agony at the side of the tracks. By 1875, journals began to report the number of wrecks. The Railroad Gazette established that 1,201 accidents had occurred that year. This included 104 head-on collisions. A national census report, however, put the total much higher at 8,216. This meant, depending on which article someone read, there were at least 3 and as many as 22 train wrecks every day. But the worst was yet to come. The quality of bridge construction in the 1800s was as inconsistent as any other part of the track. Although some strong stone viaducts of the period continued to carry rail traffic even today, early wooden and iron bridges could be flimsy and became the scenes of numerous rail accidents. The infamous Angola horror of 1867 had involved a train wreck on a bridge along the Lake Shore Line. 9 years later, another bridge on the Lake Shore Line would once again be a scene of tragedy. But this catastrophe proved to be even more disastrous than Angola. It happened a quarter of a mile east of the depot at Ashtabula, Ohio, not far from Lake Erie. On the night of December 29th, 1876, the Pacific Express was fighting its way through a violent gale, which raged from Lake Erie across northeastern Ohio. The train's destination was Chicago. The train's 2 locomotives and 11 cars were crossing the bridge over frozen Ashtabula Creek when suddenly the engineer heard a terrible crack and felt the track sink below him. Instinctively, he forced the throttle wide open, hoping to outrace a terrible fate. He had barely enough time, however, to look back and witness the other engine and all 11 cars plunge 75 feet down into the abyss. In spite of the roaring storm, Ashtabula's townspeople could hear the horrendous crash and came to the rescue. But in the confusion and rush to pull victims from the mountain of splintered wood and twisted iron, available firefighting equipment was left unmanned. The inevitable blaze that followed claimed those who had not already died on impact. 52 passengers lived through the ordeal. Many were taken to the Hotel Antler where they received medical attention. The official death toll was 83, but all the survivors agreed that as many as 70 more people were missing in the wreckage. An investigation found that faulty bridge construction caused the disaster at Ashtabula. Blame was placed on those who had built it. Charles Collins, an engineer for the Lakeshore Railroad, had questioned the bridge's construction when it was being built, but the man in charge, Amasa Stone, gave orders to have it erected anyway. Collins then did his best to make it safe. Because of their prominent positions, neither man was prosecuted. But 2 days after giving testimony, Charles Collins was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 5 years later, Amasa Stone also took his own life. In the wake of Ashtabula and other disasters, something had to be done to make train travel more efficient and safer. A meeting of railroad superintendents known as the General Time Convention was held in Chicago. There, the decision was made to adopt standard railroad time. A little over a month later, on November 18, 1883, Standard Time went into effect. It divided the country into 4 zones, each one an hour apart, and it eliminated more than 100 local railroad times. Other safety measures were also being adopted in the 1880s. More trains were using air brakes. Dangerous coal stoves were being replaced by steam heating systems. Old and brittle iron track was being converted to stronger steel. And a device called the torpedo signal was placed on tracks and burst when a train ran over it. This signal warned engineers that a disabled train blocked the track ahead. For the first time, improved railroad safety seemed possible, but in reality, things were going to worsen before they got better.